Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Bradu. Today I'm going to talk about Terra Invictus, a Shadowdark campaign by Chubby Funster, Greg Christopher, and why I love it so much for solo play. And I would even go so far as to say it is easily my favorite campaign or adventure for any RPG that I've played. And I will explain why. There's a lot of reasons. Before I get into all that, this is not a full flip through walkthrough of the book or anything like that. Dungeons and Dyslexia did a great job on a full walkthrough like that, so I'll put the link to his um, review in the blurb below. I will also post a link to Chubby Funster's. He's got a 3 video series where he is playing, so you can kind of see how he goes through it. And I watched that to determine how I'm playing too. Um, but I want to talk just about how I'm using it and why it is so much better than anything else I've played. I also should definitely mention that there's a Kickstarter that went live today, so I guess yesterday, because I'll end up posting this video tomorrow, for Shadowcity. That is Chubby Fonster's next um, big thing. And if this video interests you, if you back Shadowcity, one of the add-ons is Terra Invictus, which you can get at half price. So, and I think all of his other things that are available on Drive-Thru RPG are available as add-ons at half price. So that's one way to get it for a great deal if this interests you. So let's see, what can I say about Terra Invictus? The main thing I love about it is the perfect balance of like open world free form exploration versus a linear choose your own adventure type. A lot that's been one of the challenges for people creating, especially creating adventures for solo play specifically. A lot of them end up kind of choose your own adventure style, which is great, but it's pretty linear. The first thing you do is encounter wolves in the forest, and if you decide to try to hide from them, you go to page 67, and if you fight them, you go to page 68, and from there you go to the next. You know what I mean? It's really very similar to reading a choose your own adventure book, like we probably all read in the 80s and 90s. And you're still playing through those encounters or whatever, but in the end you're going to end up fighting the big bad guy, or entering this dungeon. And there's also, like, I love to play to just take an existing dungeon or adventure and play that solo, but you have to read each thing, and it's pretty spoilery, which there's a little bit of that in here, but it's designed for solo play to help you um, minimize that. And then there's the whole, like, complete freeform open world. So that would be like taking the Shadowdark book and on page 122, adventures, rolling a d20 3 times and coming up with deliver the high priest uh, of the evil wizard. I don't know. That's pretty. That might give you an idea what to do, but where do you go next? It's so overwhelming, especially for new solo players. And if you do the complete free form open world, you a lot of times get these weird things that don't make any sense. So let me go into Terra Invictus specifically and how that balances those aspects so well in my mind. So the way it's designed, it is a big map. You are supposed to pick one of 3 starting cities, hexes, which have cities. I don't even think that's necessary. I think you could play it. You could almost start wherever you want. I started a couple hexes away from one of the starting cities on purpose because I like that beginning, like, you start with nothing in the woods or out in the wilderness, and you have to even earn your way to civilization where you can buy gear. So the first, so that worked well for me. But I definitely could see starting in the city with kind of with full gear and full stuff. I'm gonna go to. I'll circle back to settlements, but I'm gonna go to looking at a random hex. For one thing, the way that it's designed is with these icons that represent certain things. So, to give you an example, exploring, you can't even see it, exploring the world, and there's an icon for combat. That's a common one, and it says Wisdom versus DC 9. So if you see that icon in the hex, you can roll. I pick a character who has a role that they would be in charge of. So, who is my person to avoid combat? I probably would choose my highest wisdom character, but not necessarily if they're doing a bunch of the different things. But you can avoid that combat. Basically, it means you get the heads up to stay out of that. So it gives you a little bit of freedom to not necessarily have to do everything that you see. Okay, so here's a hex, and this I picked one that am pretty familiar with. I played through not everything. As I read it, I'm like, oh, I could definitely go back to this hex, and it will be different the next time. So here's a hex, and you can see the notations. You read the weather first. You read the first look. Windy and cool, clear skies with floating snow every few hours. Gives a nice overview, kind of puts you there in the setting. That sometimes will come into play with how you interact with things, but not always. Central Rosadas is difficult terrain, peaceful but rugged mountain region. So the way I'm playing it is each terrain or each hex takes 4 hours to trek through and do the things in there. And then if it's difficult terrain, that takes 8 hours. And if it's arduous terrain, that takes 12. So I'm doing it slightly different than the Shadowdark book, but it works well for me. In a 24-hour day, you have 12 hours you can travel and 12 hours that you need to be resting, hunting, eating, things like that. So, so this particular hex I would be able to do one regular hex and this hex, and then still rest. So the first icon here is treasure. Now, usually the treasure is buried at the bottom. You have to go through the icons in order. You can't get to the one down here unless you've resolved this one above. So the treasures are often buried behind some danger. So I love that it's not necessarily, the treasures even are not necessarily balanced. I've run into a couple really, really cool treasures, but they're hidden behind something. So one of them, I think, was a super powerful weapon, and here I am, like I'm level 1 or 2 with my new characters, and I'm like, I probably must have already made my way to a more dangerous area than I should have gotten to, frankly. But I was like, oh, cool, an awesome, sword or whatever it was, and then it was like, but to get to it, you had to wade through lava practically. And I was like, oh, you're not even going to be able to sniff this unless you're super high level and come back to it because you discovered it, but it's hidden. Or you find some super creative way to work around that tremendous danger. So let's look at this hex and see exactly what I'm talking about. It starts out with treasure. You find a small cave with 3 bandit skeletons lying near the back around a damaged oak chest. The chest contains 200 gold pieces. Great, that all sounds fine, right? Now, the giving you just enough, that small cave, you can make that into whatever you want. You can go real quick and go, okay, I read that, I'm playing, Theater of the Mind, and okay, or you could bust out a map and do a little cave. Maybe there's a couple encounters to get there. There is, because I'll read the next entry in a second. But let's say we go for that. That's pretty obvious. We're going to go for that chest, right? Well, then you look at the combat icon below. 1d6 dark mantles killed the bandits and returned to their hiding places in the stalactites at the top of the cave. They'll drop on anyone who goes for the chest. Now, that combat icon, I had just said earlier, Wisdom DC 9. So when I get to there, I can roll that and go, okay, um, let's say I make that check, I roll a 17. So we're starting to go near the chest, and we look up and see that there's dark mantles in the ceiling, right? So then we can go, we're out of here, which we're probably not going to do given this case because we actually see that there's a treasure. But now we're also ready, right? So then you would go into initiative. If I fail that check, then those I'd roll those dark mantles. How many are there? And I would start that. I probably would immediately give them initiative. But anyway, so this is one of the episodes that I did. It's on my YouTube, where we found this chest. You can see how I play through this. Sorry. Further down, there's an abandoned tranquility garden. There's a little treasure there. You have to discover that area, so you might miss it. Then you go to the next hex. To go to the next hex, you have to do a navigation roll. You may get lost and go to the wrong hex that you were trying to go to. Every single hex, and this is something I really love, is random encounters. Every single hex has its own chart, D6, for random encounters. The way Chubby Funster says to do it is you roll 1d6 when you enter a hex and you do that encounter. I like to kind of split the difference because a random encounter is usually a 1 on a 1d6. So I have that when you enter a hex, you roll a 1d6 and a 1, 2, or 3. You then roll on the random encounter chart and do that. So, and they're not all combat. There's so just to go through this one without giving every single detail, there's bats that could attack the party if you roll that entry. There's a dragon. Now, because of the DCs, so on the random encounter chart, I think it's a DC 12 wisdom. We have a special guest. That's Fluff. Madam Evelyn Fluffbottom. Fluffy for short. Fluff butt. Anyway, so if you roll the dragon and you're level 1, you're going to want to roll that DC and hope that you can avoid it. And to me, that means the dragon's flying overhead, but your party sees it at a distance and can hide out and hunker down until it passes. But that danger is imminent. You may encounter that right away. Now, if the dragon sees you, that's going to change things. So there's danger around every corner. It's unbalanced. You could run into, bats or a dragon in the same hex here. Then there's also non-combat stuff. There's usually something on each one that's treasure or treasure related. So for this one, you could roll that your encounter is a frozen dwarf corpse with a pickaxe, a shovel, and a lead nugget in a bucket. That's not necessarily treasure, but especially at lower levels, those items might be useful to your party. The nugget could be treasure. This also generates a story for you. It's a lead, right? You could spend an entire session figuring out who is this dwarf, why is he here. It kind of spurs the creativity, I guess is what I'm saying. Or you can just quickly go, oh, cool, we found a dwarf. Not cool for him, but cool for us. We'll take his stuff. This must be a dangerous area. He must have been trying to get somewhere or get away from somewhere or whatever. Well, I think we kind of find out the answer to that. So at the bottom of this, and I love this one, this little thing is dungeon. And if you see that, you are supposed to design a dungeon using the Shadowdark random dungeon generation, and you can kind of choose to do that the way you want. This one gives you just enough to go with. An occupied dwarvish vault. The entrance to an ancient dwarvish vault is hidden deep in these mountains. It's overrun by and I'm not going to go into that because I want, don't want to spoil everything, but it gives me a few hints on how to build that dungeon. Some of them say how big the dungeon is. I don't know. I love that it is freeform open world, but it gives you all these seeds. You know how like video games have these quests? Like there's main quests and then there's side quests. And there's a million little side quests in this adventure that you can do. When you are in a settlement, for instance, every settlement, I don't have a printout. Every settlement has a rumor table, and you can spend some time and some coin, uh, you know, interacting with people at the tavern or in town and find out some of those rumors. A lot of those rumors are like minor quests, like side quests. So I have a list of, oh, I know what I should have shown here, darn it. I have a list of quest leads that I may decide to follow. Um, it also, this is not, let's see, this is not something I've done to a great degree, but he put a lot of time and care into deities in this. He's got over 100 deities that are created for this, and there's shrines and temples all over the place. And he has specific rules for a pilgrimage. So if you don't know where to start, and even this is too freeform for you, you can start in one of the starting cities and decide that you're first, uh, that you're on a pilgrimage, right? Let's say you roll up a priest character, you're on a pilgrimage. All you really know is you're trying to get to this specific hex, figure out where that hex is for your particular deity, and start heading in that direction, and the rest will fall into place. You will come up with these really cool ideas on how to develop the adventure from there. So I always wanted to do a hex crawl, and the open world freeform uh, thing scared me. And so this was such an easy way to jump right into a hex crawl and play it my way. Some people really want to role play out every interaction. Some people want to bust through it as fast as they can. So when you roll those random encounters, for instance, that the frozen dwarf, I can pass that by and just read it and go, okay, that's kind of a cool. If you watch his playthrough, Chubby Funster's playthrough, he kind of does that. A couple of things he encounters, he just explains real quickly and then moves on. And maybe that's in the back of your head, or maybe it'll come up later for how it interacts with something in your story. But it all comes together, and it's kind of magical when you play solo. How things will end up tying together. There's things in this that will tie into other things you find later. It's like this living, breathing world. Oh, and that reminds me of something I really want to talk about what I love about this, each hex having its own random encounter thing. I think he took a lot of care in including just about every creature in the core book somewhere in this adventure, in the random encounters and such. Whereas if I was building out my own hex crawl, I might say, okay, uh, this hex is grassland, and my random encounters for grassland include this D12 or even D20 chart of creatures or things I could find in the grassland. But now I've got that same random encounter chart for every hex that's grassland, right? And I'm only going to run into those 12 or 20 things, and it's going to get really repetitive. There's some repetition, of course, but he's got a different one for each hex. So each hex has a very unique little random encounter chart. Now, if I'm passing through the same hex over and over again, which is going to happen, especially if you end up with kind of like a home town that you keep coming back to or whatever, you might find these hexes over and over again. You can go, okay, I got that same random encounter. Now I'm going to go to the Shadowdark book and use the D100 chart for grassland instead of whatever is in this grassland hex. That, that's fine. It's you can play it any way you want. See if there's anything I really wanted to talk about that I missed. I guess not. I guess what I want to say is about the simplicity of it is I said this is my favorite campaign, my favorite adventure. I love the Goodman Games 5e conversions. When I'm playing 5e, like with my group, we are playing one of those. I love those. But what I'm finding is when I'm playing that, I get to an entry, a room in the dungeon or whatever, and it's like several paragraphs of explanation for what may be nothing of interest in the room. You know, maybe there's a trap, or maybe there's a monster, or maybe there's a treasure, but there's all this. If you play, one of the 5e big long campaign books, I'm drawing a blank. Tyranny of Dragons. That's one, right? I was trying to think of the Storm Cloud's Thunder, Storm King's Thunder, Storm King's Thunder. We tried to play that. It's complex as a DM, getting from point A where you start, and, and as it's like, how do I make sure I'm covering all these bases? What if I forget something? It's super complex and overwhelming to think of that. This, you play as you go, and all of that story stuff generates, and you can spend as much time or as little time on the parts that interest you. So I just love that. Every time I sit down to play, I'm excited because I don't know what's going to happen next. And I love the random aspect. I try, as a solo player, I try to not tell myself what's next. So, for instance, with on this dungeon, when we got to this occupied dwarvish vault, I thought, okay, it tells me what the theme of the dungeon is. I already know that it's a dwarvish, a building from dwarves, but it tells me who's occupied the the vault. And so I actually went and did a little bit of research and said, okay, so what types of creatures are going to be in here? And I made a chart for that, and then I used the what did I use? Oh, I developed my own thing for rolling what's in each room randomly. But you can use the one in Shadowdark where you roll a d12, and each room is either empty, has a monster, has a treasure, has a trap, whatever. And then use you know use those. And so I don't know what's behind each door until I get there, if that makes any sense. So yeah, if this sounds interesting to you at all, I totally urge you to go give it a shot. Either back Shadowcity and add it on, or just go straight to Drive Through RPG and pick up Terra Invictus. I don't think you will regret it as a solo player. I can't speak to it as it's definitely playable as a group with a DM, but that's not how I'm using it, so I can't really go into too much detail on that. But it's a great campaign setting. It's the only one I've found that's uh, kind of like this at all. But man, like, I know he showed that this map. Here's our map for Terra Invictus. Expands that he has an existing map for other areas. So yeah, you could play it over and over again. There's areas. My understanding, this is not totally true, but there's areas that are certainly more dangerous. I think the further south you get, the more dangerous it gets. So I've started like in here, and then I actually traveled north. I bet you could start anywhere along the top and travel south. And if you want to start as a high level character or group, you could start, on this island. I think. I'm just throwing ideas out there. I started with a full party. You could probably start, let's say you want to have, you love true solo. You want to play with one character. Well, I don't encourage doing that unless you go with the flow of what happens here and build a party organically. As you in every town, you can find people who can help you. That's part of the we picked up. Oh, I didn't print it out. We picked up a guy who I got to a settlement, and then there's all these NPCs, and you roll to see if you can interact with that NPC. It's kind of like, I think the role there would be, do you find them and do you engage them in a conversation enough to get um, to get somewhere with that, right? So we found this particular NPC, and it's kind of like if you're interacting with him favorably, he offers to join the group as an animal handler, or to ride a cart, right? So he right now has recently joined our party, not as a fighter or anything like that, but he's going to help us transport our gear, basically. Cool. Uh, if you're using the carousing charts between dungeon delves or between actual adventures, it might say you find a whatever ally. Well, that gives you this opportunity to add a character to your party. So you could start with one character and build up from there and end up with 4, 5, 6. You could start with 4, 5, or 6. And if somebody dies off, because this is Shadowdark, that's a real possibility. You can find new members to join the party. It's just gives you this awesome framework where so much of the work has been done for you to make it interesting and fit together uh, in a way that makes sense and that is fun and still so random, right? Not so random that you go, why the hell would this be here? That's what happens with total freeform sometimes. So I'm really loving playing it, and I hope you do too. So hope you enjoyed this. Sorry I rambled for a lot longer than I wanted to. But yeah, check out Terra Invictus by Chubby Funster on Drive-Thru RPG, or check out his Shadowcity Kickstarter. I'm Bradu. Thanks for watching.